You know that moment when someone underestimates you so completely that it actually becomes your greatest advantage? Well, let me tell you about the day my boss made the biggest mistake of his career. My name is Victoria Chen, and I've been working at Meridian Financial for 3 years. 3 long years of being the only woman in a boardroom full of suits who thought my MBA from Wharton was just a pretty piece of paper on the wall. 3 years of watching less qualified men get promoted while I was told to be patient and wait my turn. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago when everything changed. The kind of morning where the wind cuts through your coat and the city feels gray and unforgiving. I was sitting in conference room B, laptop open, presentation ready, watching raindrops race down the floor-to-ceiling windows of our 32nd floor office. The Chicago River snaked below us like a dark ribbon, and I could see tiny figures hurrying along the sidewalks, umbrellas blooming like black flowers against the concrete. Today was the day I'd been preparing for months. The Hartwell Industries account, a $12 million deal that could make or break careers. I'd spent countless nights perfecting my pitch, analyzing every angle, crafting a strategy that I knew was bulletproof. My apartment had become a war room of market research, financial projections, and competitor analysis. I'd even learned basic German to better understand Hartwell's European operations. "Victoria, sweetheart," came the condescending voice of my boss, Richard Blackwood. He walked in wearing his usual smirk, an expensive suit that couldn't hide his arrogance. At 52, Richard was the kind of man who believed his gender and gray hair automatically made him wise. "Before the clients arrive, let me remind you, you're here to assist, not lead. Take notes, smile, and let the men handle the talking." I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my voice steady. "Richard, I developed this entire strategy. The client specifically requested to meet with the lead strategist. Margaret Hartwell's assistant called twice to confirm I'd be presenting." He laughed, while adjusting his gold cufflinks. "Victoria, honey, they said that to be polite. When Hartwell's executives walk through that door, they'll want to speak with someone who understands business. Let her sit and smile," he said to my colleague Jake Morrison, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. Let her sit and smile. Those 4 words ignited something inside me that had been dormant for too long. Every dismissive comment, every stolen idea, every time I'd been talked over in meetings, it all crystallized into this moment. As Richard continued talking, treating me like office furniture while outlining his presentation strategy, I made a decision that would change everything. The Hartwell executives were arriving in 10 minutes, and I was about to show Richard Blackwood exactly what happens when you underestimate Victoria Chen. I closed my laptop with a soft click that somehow felt like thunder in the room. "You know what, Richard? You're absolutely right." The confusion on Richard's face was priceless. He wasn't used to me agreeing with him so readily, especially not when his statements were blatantly dismissive. His bushy eyebrows furrowed as he tried to process this unexpected compliance. "I'm glad you're finally seeing reason, Victoria," he said, straightening his tie with satisfaction. "Maybe now you'll understand how business really works." "Oh, I see everything very clearly now," I replied, standing up and gathering my materials with deliberate precision. My hands were steady, but inside my heart was racing with a mixture of fury and exhilaration. "You want to handle this yourself? Then handle it." Jake's eyes widened. He'd seen me stand up to Richard before, but never like this. "Victoria, what are you doing?" I smiled, not the fake smile Richard wanted me to wear, but a genuine smile of someone who'd just found their power. "I'm giving Richard exactly what he wants. Complete control." I gestured toward the presentation materials scattered across the mahogany table. "All yours, boss." Through the glass walls, I could see the Hartwell team stepping off the elevator. 3 executives in sharp suits, led by Margaret Hartwell herself, the iron-willed CEO who'd built her company from nothing and was known for her no-nonsense approach to business. At 61, she commanded respect in every room she entered, and her reputation for cutting through corporate BS was legendary. Richard's confidence wavered for just a moment as reality began to sink in. "Wait, you can't just leave. You have the files. The files you said were just pretty decorations? The strategy you implied was beyond my feminine comprehension?" I was already at the door, my reflection caught in the polished surface. "I'm sure a man of your expertise won't need them. After all, You've been taking credit for my work for months. Surely you remember it by now. The Chicago skyline stretched endlessly behind me as I walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I'd let others diminish. The sound echoed through the hallway, and I imagined it was the sound of Richard's world beginning to crumble. But I wasn't leaving the building. No, I had a much better plan. I took the elevator down 2 floors to the executive lounge, a place where deals were often made over coffee and handshakes. The space was all warm woods and leather chairs, designed to make million-dollar decisions feel comfortable. I ordered a cappuccino and settled into a corner booth with my laptop, opening the comprehensive market analysis I'd spent weeks perfecting. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Lake Michigan stretching to the horizon, its surface choppy under the gray sky. Somewhere up there, Richard was probably realizing he was about to face the most important clients of his career, with nothing but his arrogance to guide him. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. They're asking for you specifically. Richard's sweating bullets. Margaret Hartwell looks like she wants to murder someone. Perfect. I sipped my cappuccino slowly, savoring the rich Italian blend and the delicious irony of the situation. 20 minutes passed. Then my phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, Jake appeared at the lounge entrance, looking frazzled and slightly out of breath. Victoria, you need to come back. Now. Margaret Hartwell is asking for the lead strategist, and when Richard tried to present your work as his own, she called him out. She's threatening to walk. I took a slow sip of my cappuccino, savoring both the rich flavor and the moment. Tell me, Jake, what exactly did she say? Jake loosened his tie, stress evident in every line of his face. She said, and I quote, "Where's the woman who actually understands our industry? Because this presentation clearly wasn't created by someone who thinks market penetration means aggressive advertising." Then she asked if we were trying to waste her time with amateur hour. Now that was the Margaret Hartwell I'd researched. Brilliant, direct, and with zero tolerance for incompetence. The elevator ride back to the 32nd floor felt different this time. The numbers climbing on the digital display seemed to mark not just floors, but my ascension to a new version of myself. I wasn't the same woman who'd walked out 30 minutes ago. I was someone who'd just learned the intoxicating power of knowing your own worth. When the elevator doors opened with a soft ding, I could see the chaos through the conference room's glass walls. Richard was gesticulating wildly, sweat beading on his forehead despite the building's perfect climate control. His usually pristine hair was disheveled, and his expensive shirt showed dark patches under his arms. The Hartwell executives looked bored at best, irritated at worst. Margaret's son David was checking his phone, while their CFO, Elena Rodriguez, was openly frowning at whatever Richard was saying. Margaret Hartwell spotted me immediately through the glass. She was exactly as I'd imagined. Silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, wearing a navy suit that commanded respect, and eyes that missed nothing. At 61, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd fought for every success and never apologized for her ambition. She stood up before I even entered the room, extending her hand as I crossed the threshold. "You must be Victoria Chen. I've heard remarkable things about your market analysis." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Richard's face went pale, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning mist. "Margaret, I was just explaining our comprehensive approach." "Mr. Blackwood," Margaret interrupted, her voice cutting through his stammering like a knife through warm butter. "I've been in business for 30 years. I can tell when someone is presenting work that isn't their own, particularly when they can't answer basic questions about their own supposed strategy." The silence in the room was deafening. Outside, Chicago hummed with its usual energy. Traffic, construction, life moving forward. But inside this glass box, everything had stopped. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. David Hartwell leaned back in his chair, a slight smirk playing at his lips. "Mother's right. When we asked about the European regulatory framework, Mr. Blackwood looked like a deer in headlights. Ms. Chen," Margaret continued, turning her full attention to me, "would you mind presenting your actual strategy? The one I suspect Mr. Blackwood has been attempting to butcher for the past 20 minutes? I opened my laptop, feeling every eye in the room on me. This was it. the moment I'd been preparing for, not just for months, but for my entire career. Every late night, every dismissed idea, every condescending comment had led to this single moment. Certainly, Ms. Hartwell. Based on Hartwell Industries' expansion goals and the current market volatility, I've developed a 3-phase approach that accounts for both aggressive growth and risk mitigation. I clicked to my first slide and immediately felt the shift in the room's energy. As I began speaking, something magical happened. The room transformed. The executives leaned forward, engaged and asking pointed questions. Margaret's stern expression softened into something resembling admiration. Even Jake, who'd witnessed my work for years, looked impressed by the depth and sophistication of my analysis. But the most satisfying transformation was Richard's face, as he realized that his star employee, the one he'd been systematically undermining, was about to close the biggest deal of the quarter without him. "Your analysis of our European market challenges is particularly insightful," said David Hartwell, Margaret's son and the company's COO. "How did you identify the regulatory gaps that our previous consultants missed?" I smiled, feeling the confidence that came from months of meticulous preparation. I spent 3 weeks interviewing compliance officers across 6 European countries. Sometimes the best insights come from listening to people who are actually doing the work. Margaret's eyebrows raised approvingly. Exactly the kind of thorough approach we need. Elena Rodriguez, their CFO, nodded enthusiastically. This level of detail is exactly what we've been missing. Your risk assessment matrix is brilliant. As I clicked to my final slide, I could feel the shift in the room's energy. This wasn't just a presentation anymore. It was a demonstration of competence that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Richard had shrunk into his chair, his earlier arrogance replaced by the dawning realization of his own mediocrity. "Ms. Chen," Margaret said as I finished my presentation, her voice carrying the weight of genuine respect, "this is exactly the kind of strategic thinking Hartwell Industries needs. Your approach addresses every concern we've raised with previous consultants, and several we hadn't even considered." The words hung in the air like music. 3 years of being overlooked, dismissed, and patronized. And now the most important client in the room was validating everything I'd worked for. I could feel my chest swelling with pride, but I kept my expression professional. Richard cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of a situation that had completely slipped away from him. "Well, of course, this was a team effort. Victoria worked under my guidance. Mr. Blackwood." Margaret's voice was ice cold, and I watched with satisfaction as Richard actually flinched. "Please don't insult my intelligence. This level of insight and industry knowledge doesn't come from guidance. It comes from expertise. Raw, undeniable expertise." David Hartwell leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. "Ms. Chen, I'm particularly impressed by your analysis of our supply chain vulnerabilities. Most consultants focus on the obvious pain points, but you've identified risks we didn't even know we had." Elena Rodriguez nodded enthusiastically, flipping through the printed version of my presentation. "Your financial projections are incredibly detailed. The way you've modeled different market scenarios, it's exactly what our board has been asking for." Margaret turned back to me, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen from Richard, respect mixed with something that looked almost like pride. "Ms. Chen, I'd like to discuss the implementation timeline. Can you walk us through your projected milestones?" As I answered her questions, detailing month-by-month deliverables and success metrics, I watched Richard's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally, a kind of defeated recognition. His golden boy image was crumbling in real time, and everyone in the room could see it. "What about team structure?" Margaret asked. "Who would be leading this implementation?" Before I could answer, Richard jumped in desperately. "Of course, I would be overseeing." "Actually," I interrupted smoothly, "I believe you mentioned earlier that you wanted to let her sit and smile. Perhaps you'd prefer to take a back seat on this one, Richard." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's eyes went wide, and I could see him trying not to smile. The Hartwell executives exchanged glances, clearly understanding the subtext. Margaret's lips curved into what might have been the beginning of a smile. "I think Ms. Chen should lead this project directly. We prefer working with decision-makers, not intermediaries." The meeting concluded with handshakes all around, but Margaret held on to mine a moment longer. "Victoria, I hope Meridian Financial recognizes what they have in you. If they don't, my door is always open. I'm serious about that. After the Hartwell team left, the conference room felt different. The afternoon sun was breaking through the clouds, casting long golden shadows across the polished table. The storm was passing, both literally and metaphorically. Richard stood by the window, his earlier arrogance replaced by something I'd never seen from him before. Genuine uncertainty. His reflection in the glass looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Victoria," he began, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "About what I said earlier. You mean when you told Jake to let her sit and smile?" I asked, packing up my laptop with deliberate calm. He winced visibly. "I may have misspoken. Richard, you didn't misspeak. You revealed exactly how you see me, how you've always seen me." I stood up, meeting his eyes directly for the first time in months. "But here's what you failed to understand. While you were busy trying to keep me in what you thought was my place, I was becoming indispensable." Jake, who'd been quietly observing from the corner, spoke up with barely contained excitement. "The Hartwell deal is worth $12 million, Richard, and they specifically want Victoria leading the implementation. That's the biggest single account win in company history." I walked toward the door, then paused, savoring this moment. "Oh, and Richard, next time you want someone to just sit and smile, I suggest you hire a model, not an MBA. We tend to have opinions about our own work." As I walked back to my office, my phone was already buzzing with congratulations from colleagues who'd witnessed the meeting's outcome. Word travels fast in corporate America, especially when it involves someone getting their comeuppance so spectacularly. But the most satisfying moment came an hour later when I received an email from our CEO, Patricia Williams, requesting a meeting to discuss my immediate promotion to Senior Vice President. The subject line read simply, "Exceptional performance. Let's talk." I looked out my office window at the Chicago skyline, the city lights beginning to twinkle as evening approached. The storm clouds had completely cleared, and Lake Michigan sparkled in the distance like scattered diamonds. "Let her sit and smile," Richard had said. Well, I was certainly smiling now, but I was doing it from the executive floor, with a $12 million deal bearing my signature, a promotion pending, and a future that finally matched my ambitions. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's succeeding so spectacularly that the people who underestimated you have no choice but to watch you soar. And as I sat in my office, planning my next move in a career that had just taken a dramatic turn for the better, I realized that Richard Blackwood had actually done me a favor. He'd forced me to discover just how powerful I really was.